Well, I've always been involved in political discourse with friends, and this started off in high school where I got an interest in kind of politics through friends and communicating. And then, of course, when social media started becoming a big thing, I got even more involved, and so I decided to kind of get involved in DC, did a little bit of working. And then when I came back here and I saw the community, so given I had a lot of friends in this process of me, granted after college and whatnot, they ran for office. I've had a friend that ran for city charter recently, or rather, I'm sorry, county charter, and he got 12,000 votes. So I believe that it's running for office is like it's almost like a public right. It's a right for a citizen. And I figured at the same time, some of these issues that I bring forward, I can use it as a platform. So it's like a win-win scenario for me. I'm running, obviously because I want to improve Sarasota. I've been here 31 years. I'm a true local, essentially. So I want to protect this community, and I want to encourage a lot of, technology-forward ideas. I've been saying that we live in this 21st century, but we operate with a lot of 20th century technology. So I think we need to have a young voice to push forward new ideas and work with existing concepts to make things more efficient. So ultimately, I just decided to run because I love politics. I love local politics, and I was like, it's time. I look at, I've always discussed with people from all types of ideologies, and I feel like I would be the most likely to be cartilage between two bones. You have the county and the city right now. It's like bone on bone. They don't get along at all. They don't know how to communicate effectively. I feel like I'm that cartilage, so to speak, of being able to effectively communicate with all sorts of people, no matter what they think, whether they're thinking one way or another way. So if voters vote for me, they know that they have someone that's passionate about it and someone that will not, I'll stay long enough, if I'm having a discussion in any scenario, I stay long enough to get past the barrier of disagreement. Then you can come towards an agreement. There's a political science term called chains of equivalence. That means that you find one issue that you agree on, and then even though you may disagree on other issues, you figure, okay, let's get this one issue dealt with, and we're not playing these party politics by saying, well, I don't want to do this because it's giving them a bone. And so I'm an independent, I'm running as a nonpartisan, obviously, but I really feel like I have a unique skill in terms of communicating with all ranges of people and ideologies. I want to be environmentally friendly. There's some solar projects that I feel that should be implemented, and we have a city manager that has his top priority, apparently, when he's into environment. So it's something that I think would actually get done. Pedestrian friendly environment is another thing. I would like to reduce the amount of fatalities that occur. And another thing, a question that came up during a last night's debate for the Downtown Merchants Association was, how do we implement a little bit more of revenue from the city in terms of parks? I suggested, and according to the last city meeting with Amendment 2, they had a moratorium that pushed it back 9 months. That would be an excellent source of revenue for the city. If they had proper zoning and then they implemented the same way as pain centers are, they could have a real fantastic source of revenue. Of course, Amendment 2, medical marijuana. So it would really be a fantastic source of revenue for the city, and I don't think the city should be it's almost like they're scared of the enterprise. And it's like the horse and buggy union used to, back in the day, they would complain and they picketed against the automobile industry. Why picket against medicine? It's terrible. So that's some of the issues that I feel real strong about, essentially environment and prosperity of new enterprises, not restricting enterprises, and kind of opening the door for enterprises to flourish. I'm constantly researching myself into different technologies and different ideas. One of the things that I read today recently was that seagrass actually reduces the amount of pollutants in the sea. So if we just if we implored the nonprofits, implored Moat Marine, and really get them to attend meetings and see what can we do on a nonprofit and a philanthropist perspective. The city can only do so much in terms of legislation. What we need to do is we need to get people actively wanting to do this on their own. And that's one of the things that I think could work. Another thing in terms of environment, smart traffic lights. There's a study of Rutgers University that they did, and it said up to 6.5% CO2 emissions reduction if you had smart traffic lights. Now, smart traffic lights detect patterns with some, like Audi, I believe, is having this in their new vehicles. They detect patterns of someone driving, and so essentially what it does is they'll speed up or slow down the traffic light based off of people approaching the traffic light. So you're not just sitting at a traffic light. The problem is you get to a red light, and then it's red, and then it's going to go. And sometimes, especially during the Bay of Vista and 41, the cycle is very long. If you reduce the amount of cycles from the traffic lights, you reduce the amount of CO2 emissions just by sitting there. So just a lot of open to new ideas, and really being technology forward is the way to really help the environment. Because the environment, you look at it, everyone wants a clean environment, and technology is rapidly advancing. So the two and two go hand in hand. There certainly needs to be some public transit. There needs to be traffic studies, and clearly, some of the when they build some of the situations where traffic is and they're building development. When right with the John Ringling Bridge, that is kind of an absolute nightmare in terms of convoluted directions of going here and there. Too many people want to get in the car and drive various places. If they would have a centralized area that they could walk to their work, walk to the grocery store. A friend of mine that moved here in the 1970s, he purchased a home on Waldemere Street. I think it was like $50,000 or $40,000 at the time. But his wife works at the hospital. She could walk to work consistently, just walk, and then when they go to the grocery store, they have to drive. I would like to see, if they're going to have a high density downtown, make sure so they don't have to drive. So they can. It's like New York. They could just walk out, walk to the work, walk to the grocery store. And so that's really what I would like to promote, is a little bit more pedestrian friendly. Furthermore, Legacy Trail is about to be extended. So when that's completed, people have us bicycling, encourage people to bicycle. And that's really what it is as a city, as a leader, we want to encourage our community to be healthy. And just this notion of just driving is kind of too 20th century for me. Through incentives. They have to have an incentive to do it, and that comes from cooperation of the city. We implore some nonprofits and private businesses to build and really have this mentality that we need to implement, and we need to get everyone, for that matter, needs to have this thinking. And that's a struggle, because what you need to do is you need to change the hearts and the minds of humans. So we are stuck in this notion of thinking, and it's really about talking to one another and communicating. And then once you do that, you say, hey, you're right. My parents live down the street from Southside, the lunch area there, and they could walk, but it would take a little bit longer. And sometimes I think people just get to the idea of, oh, I'll just get in the car and drive down there, and and that's almost like a generational thing, because I think a lot of the generations that are older than me they just find it convenient for a valet. And that's convenient for them. But other people might have a different idea, that they want to actually walk to work. And like I said, it's just about getting to real people to feel it themselves, and it starts with incentives. I can relate to STOP. I think they have some really fantastic concepts, really fantastic ideas. Really, when it comes to public opinion, certain things, it makes sense, because if a developer wants to develop something in one particular area, and then the public says, we want wider sidewalks so we can walk by, and then the developer doesn't do that, that to me doesn't make any sense, because like I said, from incentives, the developer has an incentive to cater to the public. They want the public to be happy. So when you have organizations like STOP that's doing things to represent the people, that I think that's a great idea, and I definitely support that type of public involvement, because really my generation has almost not been involved enough, and so where Raymar starting Sarasota Underground, as in addition to STOP, there's really a lot of these momentums coming that really I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about the youth's voter participation and overall participation in city issues. I think that it's a great thing that people are coming together like that. Yeah, anytime that a decision's made by an oligarch, it's not good. It's essentially corruption. When you have that, when you have one person deciding everything, it's as if they're a know-it-all. And when you're a city commissioner, you're elected to be a leader, and you're elected to listen to people's views. What you're doing is you're essentially a mediator between city and people. So the people want something, the city commissioner needs to take them serious. And if you have a barrier between that, then it's not a good thing, because you want public input. You want people to be involved in the city, and I really think that they can work hand in hand. It's not like developers don't want to listen to the people, because they certainly do, because that drives business. Well, there hasn't been a traffic study in Sarasota in 20 years. I think that's probably one thing that they could do. But more or less, if you look at the surrendering statue, it was privately donated. That was from private donations. So I really feel strongly that some of these concerns, when I talked about pedestrian overpasses, I'm really, really confident that somebody would at least look into helping out through Bayfront 2020. When you're talking about that organization, they have the 3 pillars from nonprofit that they want to get donations from, the public, and private. So with that 3, really the traffic issues and pedestrian safety can really be advanced faster than we think, because people care about an issue. They'll go ahead and rally together to complete it. So that's really kind of where, when it comes to how we can implement some of these pedestrian safety concepts, really it's coming with cooperation between all those 3s and keeping the pressure on, so that they know, hey, we want to build this here, and the Legacy Trail, they're looking for money to complete the project. Well, why wouldn't a philanthropist donate money for that? It's really a good message to, especially my generation that complains about the 1%. They complain that 8 people own half the world's wealth. Well, then you don't have to raise their taxes if they donate. We demand, hey, you have your own worth billions. Sarasota is a very wealthy city. So I really feel philanthropists want to donate, especially if they put their name on it. You have pedestrian overpass, and then they'd have their name on it. And a lot of people like that. They like that idea that they're helping the community, and that's the way to do it. It's not like it's a us versus you mentality. We're all here together.
Yeah.
I would look for solar because in the long run, solar will save money, especially when there's certain municipalities like Bobby Jones golf carts. That should be solar. Arlington Pool could be solar. Traffic lights could be solar. When I talk about smart traffic lights, that's another concept of it, that they have a solar panel so that the traffic light actually operates off of the sun. So we live in the Sunshine State. That's the one way of reducing revenue, or I call it reducing expenses. Increasing revenue from that perspective with taxes, like I said, Amendment 2, that would be, Colorado made billions, and you look at every state that's had it, that's implemented some of these safe dispensaries that are proper zoning, that would be a fantastic revenue source. So when it comes to city finances, it just needs to be a little bit more pragmatically looked at. You look at the capital improvement plan, they put 400,000 penny tax and 400,000 state tax for a roundabout on Ringling and Pine Place. Then they put $475,000 to improve the Van Wezel. And so a lot of these costs, I got to wonder why does it cost $150,000 to improve a men's bathroom? I know a contractor that said he'd do it for $10,000. Where's all this waste going to? I almost want to have a real increased look, almost like a microscope, looking through to see where is exactly these costs going. Is it just? I heard a figure that they were saying it was going to cost $500,000 to do a traffic study. I don't think it would cost that. I think it would cost a Facebook post. Which traffic intersections are the worst? And then it takes a city commissioner to read the comments. It's a lot of these costs can, through social media and engagement of the community, we can cut a lot of the fat from the city and really go through it that way. I was raised in a small business environment. My parents opened a business on Sandeman Circle that's been successful still today since 1986. So I have that core understanding as of my upbringing, and furthermore, when it comes to political science, I've studied in Sweden with there, and so a lot of that policy perspective I have with a healthy small business perspective as well. So it's that small businesses look to cut costs. So, for example, Wendy's will give out no napkins unless you ask for it, or no ketchup unless you ask for it. Well, can you operate a city with that same perspective? Probably not. But it is healthy to look at cost in the city. But then you also have to look at it in terms of as a public servant or as a statesman. You can't. The park doesn't make any money. So does that mean you should replace it with a building? No. So I have a healthy balance between business and policy. If you want to increase the quality of life, you let people keep their tax money. I wouldn't just blindly raise taxes because the expenses has gone up. We need to cut the expenses first and foremost. So when it comes to taxes, I'm not too sure about that. But even if it's a new, that's why I mentioned Amendment 2, because that's a new enterprise. So you can tax a new enterprise because it's not being taxed. But to add on tax from people that are already being taxed, I don't know if that would be effective. It's like feeding a pig. You could keep eating, you could keep feeding the pig, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so at some point you have to be really reasonable with how much you're going to feed the system. Yeah, homeless, the first thing I think about homeless is veterans. That's who we need to house. Some of the homeless not necessarily choose, but they're in that kind of mentality that almost like they're a revolving door scenario. They get caught for narcotics and then they end up going to jail, and then they get out of, and then they get caught. And so really need to help implore some of these nonprofits, because they do a fantastic job at housing homeless. But homeless veterans, that's what, when I think about homeless, that's what scares me. That's what saddens me, is that there's some veteran out there. One homeless veteran is too much. So it kind of goes hand in hand with affordable housing. We need to find ways for these homeless to find homes. And one idea that someone had mentioned to me, that sometimes there's organizations that build small homes for veterans, and that's one excellent option that we could do. But in terms of, like I said, in terms of homelessness, the nonprofits are really, really good at what they do. And through PSAs, public service announcement, the city really, if we're encouraging encourage people to communicate with them. They're not vagrants, they're not vagabonds. They're just people that happen to occupy public space, and someone just doesn't like the way they look. And so if we could really treat them as humans and not look at them as a problem, but look at them as just, unfortunately, they found themselves in these situations and they need help. And nonprofits are there to help. So the city can help in terms of encouraging these homeless people to find help. And I really, really feel that we can solve these problems simply by just nudging. Another political science concept is nudging. The city needs to encourage and nudge these, people to find solutions for their problems. Yeah, the quick action, that's a good point, because it's a problem that almost has a long-term, there's short-term solutions and then there's long-term solutions for homelessness, and we need to really look into the long-term solutions and short-term solutions. One of the things I've heard, they want to move the downtown bus area, but that's just going to move the problem to another area. So there certainly needs to be imploring of people to attend city meetings, county meetings, and just explain their situation. I do feel for these businesses on downtown that may have somebody that's loitering outside their business, and it's preventing somebody from feeling comfortable enough to walk inside their businesses. So that's one thing. However, it is a right to occupy public space. So it's almost a balance that you have to have between being kind to people. Because if you're a leader in Sarasota was the rudest or meanest to homeless people. What to be mean to a human being? Let's be kind to one another. So that's really where it begins with, is we can be kind to these homeless people, and then implore experts and implore nonprofits and implore even private citizens to just talk to them, encourage them. If there is a way for homeless, they house homeless all the time, nonprofits, they always help them all the time. It's just about getting them to go to the door. So I call on everyone to really just communicate. I do it all the time. When I was outside the city hall, I was going to attend a city hall meeting, and I took the time to stop to talk to a few homeless people that were sitting on the park bench just to hear their concerns. So they're people. We don't need to look at them like they're just inanimate objects that are problems. They have feelings too. So, that's the way to do it, is to encourage them, get them to be like, I want to help, I want to do this. Hey, this person helped, instead of being like, well, the city doesn't care about me. So that's the major issue in terms of a long-term solution, is you need to change the concept, the hearts, the mind, the way they think, so that they know that there's people out there to help, instead of thinking like it's a hopeless situation. That's absolutely, that would be fantastic. I think that would help. That would help a lot of people. Yeah, I think that would be a good concept, because as long as we're not, like I said, when it comes to revenue and expenses, as long as we're not just kind of just feeding a pig. But this is not an example of feeding a pig. This is like, cleaning the pig pen, so to speak. So it is a good concept when you're doing things like that will help out. Something that would obviously, there's a lot of experts out there that would be able to tell their effective solutions. Although if they're going to have a come-as-you-go shelter, I'd like to have some sort of job aspect to that, so that not only just show up there so that they can have a place to go to sleep, but they can wake up and see, hey, there's temp jobs available, for simple things. I think that's a really good way of helping out some of these people that are in unfortunate situations, is that you not just find them housing, but you find them jobs as well, so that they can eventually find their own place, instead of having to rely on other people by helping them. Is that you want to get them in a position where they can help themselves. I think high density development is a good start. You need to find areas for people to find homing, but for housing. But affordable housing is a really complex problem because you're fighting the marketplace. And if you have one neighborhood that every homeowner wants their value of their home to go up, because that's always good if they decide to sell it. Then there's other people that don't want their value of their house to go up because that means their property taxes go up. So you have, I mean, can you find affordable housing on Longboat Key? You know, you can't. So that's the marketplace. So it's almost like you have to maybe build out east to find more affordable housing. There's certainly the traffic problem because a lot of people want to live in the center of Sarasota, but that's the marketplace. So it's a really complex problem that almost autonomously works on its own, and so that's the major challenge with affordable housing, because you could say affordable housing on downtown on Main Street, but that's not going to be the same price to live than if you live in east of Tuttle, or if you live on Longboat Key. That all those prices are different. But density, that's one of the keys I've read. If there's a little bit more parking or for individuals to live in an apartment, so there's actually, instead of building it, you complex it, because you don't want too many high rises because that turns off a lot of people, but you do want to construct buildings so that you can find more people to find housing. But like I said, the marketplace, that's the major challenge, and that's something that we need to find experts to consistently input their expertise opinion on, so as a city leader, I have the resources to make a decision based off of pragmatism and sound reason. I think that sounds like a good idea, because there's a marketplace and then there's a consumer, and when a developer is not able to effectively build affordable housing, that's a barrier between him and the consumer. So the less barriers there are generally between the marketplace and the consumer, the better it is. So I would be in favor of that, especially if it means affordable housing and getting people in homes. Yeah, if they explain in certain scenarios where you look at the Ringling, right where the Payne Park is, and there's that railroad track there, and then there's those decrepit buildings that have been sitting there for God knows how long. The housing right behind there, I don't necessarily, you asked them, would you rather have an abandoned railroad track with abandoned buildings, or would you rather have that when that's connected by Legacy Trail, some townhouses right there that would overlook Payne Park, and it wouldn't change the look and feel of your neighborhood, it essentially would upgrade nearby instead of having these rundown buildings? I don't think anyone would be against that. So it's about like reasonable development through these neighborhoods. A lot of neighborhoods are going to stay the same, but a lot of this comes from a lot of northern, like North Virginia, upstate New York. They come in here and they build their houses that fit how their lifestyle is up north, and it's a little bit sad to see some of these homes come out and being replaced, some of these classic Florida homes, because there's a Florida breeze. So that's another issue for a lot of neighborhoods. When people come in different neighborhoods and they build all these big homes, that is the problem, is that they just sit inside in their AC. I know Sarasota is America's first AC air-conditioned city, but that's, there's a balance between just sitting inside, and there's some people that actually enjoy the outside, enjoy their backyard, and so when their breeze is being interrupted, I can relate to that. But there's also, like you said, when it comes to density and it comes to town hall, a little bit easier, because it is difficult to find affordable single homes. So it's just about finding it in the right spots, and that comes from public opinion, developers, and really finding a solution that everyone can enjoy. Yeah, I read a little bit about, and it's a good thing that they're simplifying the code. That's certainly a problem when you have code that gets in the way of reasonable development. You know, you have to have code that you don't want, obviously, buildings that go right to the road and there's no way of people walking around there. That's a problem. But like I said, when it comes to the marketplace and the consumer, generally the easier it is for the marketplace to match the consumer, the better it is. So it's a good start to simplifying the code. The code doesn't need to be complex. It should be easy enough for an average citizen. You walk around and go in Sarasota, what's the code? Form-based, that no one would know what you're talking about. And so that's another problem, because if people don't know what you're talking about, they're probably against it. So there needs to be people to be a little bit more reasonable in terms of public engagement. I think you have to almost give a little bit to one side and then a little bit to the other side. So I think if everyone would agree on the stop is for wider sidewalks. So that would be, I think, I don't know why anyone would disagree with that. Okay, just have a wider sidewalk and then you can develop your building. So it's really comes almost on a case-by-case example, because you might have more opposition.
Should be in charge of deciding that? Who decides?
Well, the city commissioners are leaders. And so they need to surround themselves by a responsible and effective and smart people. So that's the way to do it. You want the public to come in. The city commissioner is not supposed to be a know-it-all. They're supposed to be just somebody that is a leader and listens to everyone's concerns. So that's really what it is about having them really put pressure on the city commissioners. And if developers put pressure and they put pressure, like I said from the beginning, when you get past this block of disagreement, because they just disagree on something, well, let's find something that they agree on. So it's about really leaping forward over that blockade that exists between the two groups. If one developer who has a lot of money and wants something done, I would think he'd want to talk to the people about it and have them implement it. If I'm elected by the people. So I would go with my constituents, what their concerns are. That's who I was elected for. I was elected to represent the people. I wasn't elected to represent one developing firm. So even though I can sympathize with a developer having their own private area and wanting to build whatever they want to build, and then the neighbors don't want, I understand that, because it's their private area, private property, and then they want to build it the way they want to build it. But if you're developing for business, or even residential for that matter, you want people to move in your area. And so what message would you send to the community by not really taking anyone's concerns serious? So I would certainly support the people. I don't like paid parking, or parking meters. It hurts the small businesses. That's the biggest problem. Is you want somebody to be able to go downtown for lunch and enjoy it, or go shopping. And so it's kind of reducing their incentive of going downtown. Well, if downtown had paid parking, and then right by Southside Deli doesn't, and I want to go to lunch, I'm going to Southside Deli. I'm not going to go and have to pay $6 or whatever it's going to be. It's going to be more expensive. It's not going to be like the classic quarter machine. It's probably going to be like $5, $6. So and that's going to hurt the poor people first. So the parking meters hurts poor people first and foremost. Rich people probably don't care. Like, whatever, $5. But if somebody wants to go downtown, go to the pastry art, and then they want to hang out there for a couple hours, enjoy themselves, hang out there for 2-3 hours, and have a good cup of coffee and discuss things with people, they're not going to want to do that, and they're going to feel like they're being pushed out. So that's really, it comes down to that issue. When it's like when you have anytime you like raise a tax on cigarettes, for example, it actually hurts the poor people first and foremost, because they're the ones that are impacted the most by it. So the parking meters is going to impact the poor people. It's not going to impact somebody with a lot of money. They're not going to care as much. Cut a little bit of the fat from the expenses and embrace new enterprises. That there's solar. When I said that can reduce the expenses. We really can launch ourselves into a new era, into a new way of thinking. In Sarasota, if we were the first city to become in Florida, in the United States, to have AC, why can't we be first city to do other things? First city to have 100% solar, and I know that's not obviously the first city, but in terms of social media engagement, you could have that message of Sarasota has decided to convert, to all solar, and then over the long run, that's going to help out with the expenses. So we need to find out ways of reducing, even at the smallest point. If we just do that and then work our way real quick, then you can, you don't want, when I said put a sandstorm in office, I meant that concrete structures do not go away when it comes to a sandstorm. Debris that's on the ground may go away. So that's what we need to get rid of, is the debris, the expenses, the debris that's in the expenses. Keep the stuff that needs to be there, the stuff that the city needs to operate effectively. But a lot of the expenses that they're just kind of blowing. Yeah, you have Tom Barwin got free tickets to the Van Wezel, that's city money. So that's unnecessary. Just a lot of these things are unnecessary. I think it's somewhere. You start somewhere, and then you work up from there. But in not starting anywhere that's the problem. That's why I'm pushed for solar, because we really could be cost effective. We live in the Sunshine State, so that would be a good way of reducing cost. And you look at revenue. Revenue has, that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is the budget. And you look at Van Wezel, they're the largest of the environment, the public portion of the budget. So we have to really look at unnecessary expenses. Like I said, $450,000 to upgrade the Van Wezel, $150,000 for the bathrooms, $800,000 total for that roundabout. The city is almost wildly spending, and so it needs to be a little bit curtailed a little bit. Well, when you look back at the 2008 election, you had John McCain, who was, quite frankly, had more listed qualified than Obama, but Obama took the election, and he did actually a good job in terms of building his own credibility of being an effective president on his own level there. So if you're electing me, you're electing somebody that's passionate about it. I'm passionate about issues. I'm passionate about City of Sarasota. So it's like investing in a startup company. You get me in now, then you can really build on that, and then in 2019 we can have another person that gets elected that's environmentally friendly and for solar, and then we can really push forward some of these ideas that we need to launch ourselves into a new era. That's where it starts at, which is a grassroots operation right now. So if I get in as city commissioner, that's a win for the environment. It's about having, a little bit of understanding, and understanding that I will work with everyone on a real effective level of ideology, because I love political discourse. I love learning, and when when I get in there, I'm going to be so passionate about helping Sarasota that I won't be caught up in bureaucracy. I won't be caught up being with having that general just boringness, and won't listen to people. I'll be reading comments all the time. I actively go to your guys' Facebook and all other Facebooks, and I look at the comments to see what people think. And then that's really what it comes down to. They know that they can call me, they can email me, and they can comment and I will read it. And so that's it starts there, because you don't want somebody in office that just thinks that they're a know-it-all and like it's all me. It's about the people. So that's where it really comes down to, is that people can know that they can communicate with me on issues that they care about. I think they would, because the one that I talked about, which is on Mound, and I believe it's called Bayfront, it converts to Bayfront Drive. Right there, I see all the time people trying to cross, and they have to wait at the red light. People want to park maybe at Bayfront and then walk to downtown, and so they don't feel like you have to cross this dangerous intersection. If they had that, and also during events, they could direct traffic so much smoother if they had an overpass right there. So everything really, it would encourage people. It certainly would. When you look at a concept of roads, for example, and universities do this all the time. They build a building here and then a building here, and then they maybe have one sidewalk. That's it. Then what they do is they wait to see where the pedestrians walk. So they see a lot of like worn down grass in certain areas. Then they pave that area. So really, it just takes an amount of somebody to just sit there and view to see how many people cross at the certain times, where do they cross, and then when they keep doing that, then you build the overpass, and people will use it. If they build it, they will come, right?